Our add item to cart test has become rather long now and contains quite a few assertions. We really should try to refactor this into several smaller tests. So let's start with the registration steps here at the beginning. Now, user registration is a use case on its own. So we're going to create a new test at the top of the module called register user. So let's go ahead and add that as a property of the module. And we're going to assign a function to that with browser as the argument. Now, we can't simply move the registration steps out of the add item to cart test and put them in this new test though, as these steps are required in this test since guest users can't add an item to the cart. So what we're going to do is create a new custom command for the registration process. So let's go to the terminal and type touch tests e2e custom commands, and we'll call this new one register. In the new register command, let's put exports.command to export a property command, and we're going to let that equal a function. Now we're going to cut the registration commands from the add item to cart test. So let's come over here and grab these and come back here and paste these into the body of this command. We're also going to need the register and form variable declarations. So let's go ahead and cut those from there. Put them at the top of this command. And now we're going to change any references to browser to this. And that's the same object, it's just with a different name. Now there are a few other small changes we'll need to make here as well. So firstly what I want to do is refactor this variable register. So I can go here and go, essentially just renaming it. And I want to rename it to page. Now, the reason for that is that it just makes more sense in this new context for it to be called page. We're also going to add a user parameter to the function so that a test that uses this command can pass in the user object. Finally, what I want to do is return this at the end of the function as per our Fluent API. With that done, let's use the new command in the add item to cart test. So let's put browser.register user like that. And coming to the new register test, we can now use that here as well. So we can go browser.register user. And what we want to do now is cut the assertions from the add item to cart test as they really belong in this new register test. So essentially you want to get this assert statement here on browser and this one on the sticky nav object here. So I'm going to cut these and come up here. I'm just going to reformat that slightly and paste those in. So that means we're also going to need to get the site and sticky nav variables, and we're going to put those into the register user test. And we're also going to need a copy of the home variable declaration. So I'm just going to make a copy of that one and paste that one up there now. Now finally, before this register user test is complete, we have to call browser.end as the last method. And that's going to ensure that the browser gets closed. And if we don't do that, the browser state is going to persist and it would pollute any subsequent tests. All right, so with that refactoring done, we should now try and rerun the test suite and just make sure everything works. So go to the terminal, npm run test e2e. So now you can see everything is passed. The only difference now is we have two separate tests, register user and add item to cart. and all the assertions within those have passed. All right, so let's now abstract the select item functionality out of the add item to cart test, much the same way that we did for the registration functionality. So come to the terminal again, and we're going to create another custom command. So this one will be custom commands. This one will be called select item. Let's go ahead and open the new file, and as before, we'll start off by going exports.command and let that equal a new function. Whoops. Now we're going to go back to the test, and we're going to cut the code from the add item to cart test. So we're going to need to go here all the way down to here. I'm going to cut that, come back to this command and paste that in the body there like that. We're also going to need to go back to the test and cut the home constant and the first item summary. Put those at the top of the command. And we're just going to need a copy of this item variable since it's going to be used in both tests. All right, let's again rename any reference to the browser object. We refer to this instead. And we're also going to need to put a call to navigate on the home object, since we can't assume that the browser will already be on that page when this command is used. Finally, we're going to return this at the bottom of the function. Now you recall that the getAttribute method here is used to retrieve the URL from the anchor tag surrounding the first item summary so that we can use it to verify if the page we land on after clicking the link is for the same item. Now, rather than assigning the resulting value of that to this variable URL, let's instead return this to the test that calls the command, and we're going to do that using a callback. So how we'll do this is we're going to create a callback parameter in our command. Then down here in this function, we're going to replace this callback here and instead go ahead and call our local callback, passing in result.value like that. So back in our test file, let's create a new test now above our add item to cart test. And this one is going to be select item from homepage. And we assign a function to this with browser as the argument. Now in the body, we can go ahead and call browser.select item so that we select the first item on the page. And we can now pass in the callback function to this method, allowing us to retrieve the URL of the first item on the page. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a local variable URL at the top of the function, and then we're then going to pass in a function with val as the argument and assign a value to URL, which will be the returned val. So after that, we're ready to test the URL value, and we can do that by cutting the assertion that we made down here in the add item to cart test. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out from there. And then I'm going to go and paste it onto the end there like that. And this means we can actually delete the URL variable from this test down here. And the last thing to do to finish the select item from homepage test is just to call end. So we can now complete the add item to cart test. And all we need to do for that is, after we've registered a user, we can just go ahead and put select item. And note that we're not going to pass in a callback to this custom method, since we have no immediate use for the URL value in this test. Since we don't always want to pass a callback to the select item command, we'll need to create a default value for the callback. Otherwise, we'll be calling an undefined function, and this line down here is going to throw an error. So to provide a default, we can simply put in the method profile, callback equals just a blank function like that. So with all that done, we can now rerun our test suite, and hopefully everything is still working. So as you can see, we now have 3 separate tests that we're running and a total of 12 assertions, and all of which have passed.